குறைவா பேசிய நிமிஷத்துக்கு செலுத்தணும், செகண்டுக்கு பேசிய கூடுதலா செலுத்தணும். எட்டிசலாட்டிடம் இருந்து சூப்பர் சிம்.
ශ්‍රී දල්පන්දු ක්‍රීඩාවේ හෙට දවස මෙවර ඔෆ් ද ෆීල්ඩ් තුලින් ඔෆ් ද ෆීල්ඩ් ඉරිදා රාත්‍රී 9:30ට channel I ඔස්සේ.
Good evening, friends, and welcome to this month's edition of Dhamma and You. Our guest today is Vipula Wanigasekera. Good evening, Vipula, and welcome to our program. As you know, the ultimate aim of every Buddhist is to someday, somehow, sometime attain Nirvana. Now, what are we supposed to do as Buddhists towards this faraway goal?
Yes, but before you touch on this subject Nirvana, let us ask ourselves this question. Why Nirvana? Why do we want to achieve Nirvana? What's the purpose? And that should be the beginning. Because the Buddha said, I teach only one thing, and that's suffering and end of suffering. Then one needs to ask oneself, what is suffering? And are we really suffering? What causes suffering? If there is anyone who says, no, I am fine, you know, I don't go through any kind of suffering, then there is no necessity for such person to seek any freedom or nirvana or anything. But if you understand suffering as a truth, as an inevitable truth in life, that is the beginning in your quest for the
Keyword
nirvana.
is the inevitable truth.
Yes, because you see, suffering, it arises like this. Now, no one can escape old age. You know, you are getting old, and you know, it's not something that is very pleasant. You know, and you go through many things to stay younger, and you know, at least maintain your and it doesn't work, you know, in the long run. And then, of course, every human being is subject to sicknesses. So that you know, arises suffering. Now, that is what is inevitable in life. Then, if you look at the modern world, the kind of things that you have to do for existence, there's so much of stress, so much of anxiety, the worries, anger, hatred, and all that is suffering. There is also another suffering, because some people inflict suffering on others, and that is also suffering, and they don't know that. So suffering is all over. Of course, the word suffering is fairly heavy. You know,
it's a very strong word, yes.
It's a very strong word, but you know, if you really ask yourself, it's like an underpinning current that comes with you all the time. But having realized that yes, there is suffering and there has to be a way out, that should be the one that ignites interests anyone, not necessarily Buddhists or anyone, any human being, to go in search of something that will take them out of suffering. Now, that is called Nirvana. Now, during Buddha's time, one should not get confused, because if you think that you have to acquire knowledge, you know, there is Abhidhamma and there are 22,000 sutras. If one thinks that you have to study all that in order to, you know, attain Nirvana, it's a fallacy, you know. During Buddha's time, if you look at very carefully what he was now, if you look at some of the sutras in Anuttara Nikaya, just 2 lines. So what he tried to do was to convey this message through parables, metaphors, examples, for the simple reason that Nirvana cannot be explained by a language, because the language has been developed by people to express experiences of the 5 senses interpreted by the mind, and Nirvana is beyond mind. So therefore, the language is very poor to explain what Nirvana is all about. So this is an inward journey. In order to escape suffering, one has to do this analysis within.
I like this word, inward journey.
Yes.
It goes the other way.
You see, people always tend to think that there's a path, I am here, Nirvana is there, and I have to get there. And And these are all concepts, you know, and Buddha very clearly said, this is the cardinal rule in Buddhism, you know, that's don't believe anything unless you are convinced of this truth. You yourself is convinced. So that's a ground rule in Buddhism. So, you know, in this quest for, you know, for nirvana, people listen to various sermons, you read a lot of books, and you know there are quite a lot of material that is available, and today you can see sermons after sermons, you know, and sometimes one sermon contradicts the other. You know, some people say, well, the nirvana is not that difficult, it is in this life, you only have to, you know, do this analysis, you can discover it's in you, while the others advocate that the nirvana, it's a long journey and it's a sansaric journey, and you start collecting kusal and then do away with akusal. So these are different versions, but are you supposed to believe, you know? So it is up to you to do this analysis, and now that you raise this, you know, okay, how to get there? The first thing is that you embarked on this inward journey. Turn your attention to yourself and start asking yourself, who are you and what are you? And I think that should be the stepping stone, or the first thing that one has to do, and then the rest will fall into place. It's not correct for me to, you know, say that, you know, it is this, because then again I am lying. If I say, well, this is the path and then you have to do away with this, do away with that, then it's the language that I am using. So, you know, it's not sometimes correct for us to, you know, bring out concepts, opinions, and tell the people this is it, because each one realizes it in a different way.
So what is it really then?
Well, if we are to say it in a nutshell, it's the realization that there is no person,
Self.
there is no sufferer. So suffering is there, but if there is no sufferer, so you see how subtle this is, you know. So it is not the depth.
Okay, there is no sufferer.
There is no sufferer.
To experience suffering.
You see, the sufferer is created by the mind. What is mind? Mind is stream of thoughts, stream, it's one after the other. People think they are thinking, but no, it's not. If I ask you a simple thing, you know, look at your body. Do you circulate your blood, or do you breathe? But we think, yes, I breathe, right? And I do this. Nothing happens. It happens on its own.
It's an involuntary
you know?
reaction.
Yeah, and why don't you apply the same thing to your thoughts? It's very radical. You know, you might not, you know, under normal circumstances, the general model does not accept this kind of version. But this is the way you can break the fences. You know, like Buddha says, you know, swim upstream. You know, you have to break this social, you know, kind of the conditioning. Actually, nirvana is a deconditioning process. Once you have, you know, once the self collapses, you are free. You see, there is, it's otherwise, you know, people like Sopaka, Sunita, you know, son of Anepindu, they understood Buddha in few seconds, because it is not the knowledge that tells you how to get to it. Is, if you have to be wise, you should be willing to have an open mind. You must start thinking out of the box, and then you begin to see, hey, there's another way of looking at life and the world. For instance, now that you raised this, okay, what is, now Buddha said the whole world is you. He said, in this fathom long body, I proclaim the world. Now, isn't that something that you should really probe into? Because how can you be the world? You know, the world is there, I am here. But it's a beautiful thing. These are the parables with which people can really do this analysis. Now, if I expand a little further, I see you. Where is the seeing taking place? You see, it's in me. I hear you. Where is the...
So perception of what I am.
Yes. So now say What is my life? My life is my experience. What is experience? It's thoughts, images, sensation, perceptions and emotions. Tell me anything else other than that to call it a life. That's it. So is it difficult? Find yourself in the thoughts. No, you are not there. Find yourself in sensation. They come and go, of course, you know.
But then you experience the sensation.
Yeah.
One experiences.
Yeah. So among, you see, this is the subtlety of this. Now, what is happening, and among this, you know, you have this stream of thoughts, and in this stream of thought, you also have thoughts to institute that person.
Yourself
I
into
am
it.
doing this. This is me, and I am doing this. The easiest way to do this, you know, Buddha said, don't live in the past, don't live in the future. And what is the past? It is a thought which is arising now. You cannot possibly experience the past. It's remaining as a thought. Now, if you ask yourself, but I have a memory, you know, I have a past, certainly. No one can say I didn't have a past. What are the things that you remember? You remember only the ones that you consider to be important. Those are the only things that you remember. You don't remember everything that happened in the past. So the ones that you do not remember, it is as good as that they not happening, that they didn't happen at all. It is as good as that.
Yeah.
So is your future. It is only a thought arising in the now. I am not suggesting that, you know, just because, you know, your real experience is, you know, it is wrong to say the present moment also, because when you say moment, you are bringing the time factor again. It is, I think the correct word is now, you know, now. It is what is happening now. Now, I am not suggesting that, you know, tomorrow is not there and you should not be planning. You should plan tomorrow, day after, next year, what you are going to do. When is it happening? It's happening in the now.
In the now of the future.
Well, when it
and the
happens,
now of the past.
When it happens in the future, it will be in the now of that.
Yes.
You see?
So life is a succession of nows.
Yeah, but then what happens is you bring the thoughts comes and tell you, okay, it rearranges everything in a sequential order, and then tell you, hey, this is your life story.
All the nows strung together.
Yeah, exactly, either way, yeah. So this is, I just gave you a few examples, and this is how you start the journey. You know, you do this unorthodox way of analysis to see whether you can grasp something.
So the analysis done, what's the next step?
Well, you see, there's another thing happening. You know, when you realize nirvana, and if the realization is the collapsing of me, who realizes nirvana? You see? So this is.
Can you say that again?
All right. So if there is no thinker behind the thought, if there is no experiencer behind the experience, all you have is the experience. It is only the thoughts that establish and re-establish that there is a self. But when the self collapses, that's it. And that's what you call freedom.
You're talking of physical self, but what about this Atma or the spirit or the stream of consciousness?
You see,
that whatever thing that's there.
I know. Now, this is something I do not want to touch on for the simple reason, you know, when Buddha was asked this question, okay, what is the beginning and what is the end and what happens, this, all that, and not to mention the fact that I must tell you, this might be questioned, but the question is, during Buddha's time, nothing was written. And one wonders why. Because at that time, there was this language called Magadha, which is a very powerful language. But Buddha never wanted to write down anything. Because the moment something is written down, people tend to interpret that. And they have their own versions.
It gets colored.
So then what happens is, subsequently all these things were written down, and there were so many versions saying that some certain versions were destroyed, and then they introduced certain other things that were in existence before Buddhism. So therefore, what is real is your experience in the now. Other than that, it's just an opinion, just a thought, just a kind of a concept that you try to believe in, like the Atman. I mean, the Anatta Lakkana Sutra itself says there is no Atman. You know, it says there is no self. I mean, that Anatta Lakkana Sutra is a half a page sutra, which enabled all the 5 disciples to attain Nirvana. Just a half a page. To say, all Buddha said was, you know, this, you know, find out whether you have the self in the body. Find out you have a self in the sensations, perceptions, you know, Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankarana. And that's how, it's a simple analysis. And those who ask this kind of questions, the Buddha's response was, you know, when someone is struck by an arrow, shot by an arrow, and you don't go and ask the color of the arrow and who shot this, you know, you first think, because life is very fragile. And, you know, I mean, like, you know, time flies, you know, and within this short period, if you go to fathom out, you know, where will you be and how you came in to be, you know, it's a futile exercise. It's not going to take you anywhere. And Buddha himself said, don't try to find answers there. Find who you are and what you are and see whether there's a way out of suffering.
You're telling me about the work you do in the tourist industry with sharing the Bhavana experience with foreigners. How does this work?
Yes, actually, this is a result of my research over the last several years. And although, of course, Sri Lankans probably don't know that this philosophy, the no-self philosophy, is cutting across the world today. I can name them from Eckhart Tolle to Rupert Spira, you know, Tony Parsons, Gangaji, Mooji. These are the leading personalities in the world, and thousands of people flock around them only to listen to these people for half an hour, 1 hour. They fly to wherever they are, they listen to a sermon, they go back, you know. And all of them say Buddha is the first in the human history to have discovered this. They give the full credit to the Buddha. And then they convey this message. And one of the things I found was that Sri Lanka is not offering that kind of a service, despite the fact that we call ourselves, you know, that, and we have preserved the pure Theravada. Unfortunately, no one comes to Sri Lanka to learn Buddhism.
For what reason? Why
the reason is it's more inward. You know, our way of practicing Dhamma is very local in the sense like it's partly ritualistic, partly this thing, and it's very traditional, so to say, you know. Whereas the people who are seeking freedom, they are, you know, they want to benefit from it and they want to see the benefit from it. And they are rational people. They try to correlate one thing to another. If they can't fathom out, okay, now they are doing this, how does that lead to freedom? You know, if they can't fathom it out, I'm not saying what is right or wrong, but, you know, even they don't see it. Yeah. So I introduced this, you know, after I launched this book, I spoke to the people who are in the tourism industry, and I said, anyone who is interested in, I mean, after all, they have come to a country which is a Buddhist country. The majority are Buddhists, and if they want to know, I want to know something of the Buddhist philosophy, and I have given my contact details, so then they invite me. It's a very simple thing. They gather, and I conduct this, what we call meditative session, because the word meditation is also now, it's getting a bit stale, you know, the meditation. It's people have various interpretations for that. So I conduct this discourse, the same thing that I have been telling you now, and bring them to some kind of a meditative mood, and then they are ready to experience the silence, tranquility, which is what you are doing in samatha. Samatha is to, you know, you are not disturbed by the mind activities or the mental noise. So once that is done, then we slowly switch on to the reality of life. So I guide them through, you know, for about, first the discourse, about 20 minutes, then I guide them through this meditative thing for another 20 minutes.
Which is what exactly?
Well, you see, I ask them simply questions for them to ask themselves. You know, like the questions, okay, do you circulate your blood? You know, what do you feel right now? And be the observer of your thoughts and see how they arise and then disappear. And why do they disappear? In the past, you are carried away by the thoughts. But now the thoughts come and go. Why? There's a difference because you are observing them, you are watching. All right, so now the thoughts come, they go. You are the observer. And you don't control your body, it controls itself. You observe the thoughts and they come and go. Who are you then? You see, this is the way to, you know, and then they begin to realize, hey, there is something. So indirectly I am putting this Buddhist very core message across. Find out whether there is a person in you telling you that you have to deal with the world, you have to negotiate with this world, and everything happens to you. You know, find out whether this is.
What has the response been
well,
by your cross section of
yes. Now, for instance, now initially when I started, it was, you know, some days when I go, there's only one person, very odd person. Then it became a word of mouth, and today they are waiting for me. And in fact, now they want me to conduct this regularly, but since I am working, it's difficult for me to. Nor can I delegate this to another person. You know, there's a style that is required.
Yes, yes.
Because if you change the style, then it won't work. There is also a little bit of marketing in this, you know.
And it's what you bring of yourself into it as well.
Exactly. So you become a. So I cannot totally delegate this to other people because, you know, I'm in the tourism industry. You know, I work in the tourist board.
So you know the requirements, basically.
Exactly, and what they are looking for.
Yeah.
After all, 30-40 million people travel out of their homes looking for peace, tranquility, and there is certainly a market for us as well. So so the word of mouth, they go back and say, hey, there is a meditative session, don't miss that. Wherever you go, you contact this number and they will get this person down. Of course, I do this as a passion, in the sense there is no monetary, you know, expectations of doing this. But I think after all, you know, we have so many attractions in the country, you know, from mountains to beaches to wildlife, you name it, historic site. But I think this is the biggest attraction. If you really, you know, if you really talk about, you know, this is a gift that Sri Lanka can offer to the world.
So if correctly marketed, to use the wrong term, it will certainly be a bonus to mankind.
Definitely,
in the long term.
Definitely, because after all, if you have preserved this Dhamma for over centuries, then why not give it out, share it.
So anybody wishing it can always contact Vipula and you're available.
Wanigasekera, yes. And I also conduct this for locals as well. But simple message, put it across and ignite this interest in them, for them to do the analysis themselves within, because the peace, Buddha himself said, peace is in you. You can't possibly have it from an outside object.
Vipula, as we come to close, what would you want to say as a summing up of our entire chat today?
The message I want to convey is that, you know, just don't believe in anything until you are sure of yourself, until you are convinced. Because what happens is, it is a self-realization. It cannot come from a knowledge outside. It doesn't work that way. Just turn back and ask yourself, you have come a long way in your life. Have you gained anything? Are you sure that you are on the path? If you are not, then it's something that you should work on. So therefore, certainly you have to really ask yourself, if you are not on the path, you need to look at the same Dhamma from a different perspective.
Thank you, Vipula, for being my guest on the show. Thank you very much indeed. We meet you again, friends, next Poya Day at the same time on Channel I. May you all be well and happy.